October 23, 1943, for 47 a.m., RAF Bessingbourne, England. The screaming starts before you see the plane. Staff Sergeant Paul Zuck drops his wrench. He's been under the belly of a B-17 for 6 hours straight. Hands black with grease, eyes burning from exhaustion. But that sound, that god-awful sound of engines failing, metal groaning, hydraulics screaming their death rattle. He knows what's coming. The bomber appears through the pre-dawn mist like a ghost. No landing gear. The pilots are trying to belly land 65,000 pounds of aircraft with 10 men inside and enough fuel to turn the whole thing into a crematorium. Zuck runs, everyone runs, but not away, toward it. The B-17 hits the runway and the sound is like the earth splitting open. Sparks fountain 30 feet high. The propellers shred themselves against concrete. The bomber slides, and somehow, impossibly, stops. Men pour out of the escape hatches. All 10, all alive. Screaming, crying, some of them kissing the ground. But Zuck isn't celebrating. He's staring at the bomber's underside, at the single puncture in the hydraulic line. One hole, the width of his thumb. That's all it took to almost kill 10 men. He's seen this before. He's seen it 17 times in the last month. 17 crews that didn't make it because of single points of failure. One hit, one leak, one catastrophic loss. And he's the only one who seems to understand what's happening. 3 weeks earlier, the briefing room smells like cigarette smoke and fear. Zuck isn't supposed to be here. He's a mechanic, not a pilot. But he's made friends with Lieutenant Danny Morrison, a kid from Ohio who looks about 17 but swears he's 22. Danny's plane, Mama's boy, needs an engine overhaul. But right now Danny needs to brief his crew for tomorrow's mission. Schweinfurt, ball bearing factories, deep in Germany. The kind of mission where you count how many planes leave and pray it's the same number that comes back. It never is. Zuck, Danny says after the briefing, his voice quiet. Be honest with me. Mama's boy gonna make it. Zuck wants to say yes. Wants to promise this kid he'll see his mama again. But he's from Pittsburgh, Steel Town. His father taught him, never lie about what's broken. Hydraulics worrying me, Zuck says. One hit in the wrong place. I know. Danny cuts him off. I know. But that's the design, right? That's how Boeing built it. Nothing we can do. That phrase, nothing we can do. Zuck's heard it 100 times. From engineers, from officers, from guys who've given up. But Zuck's father also taught him something else. Everything can be fixed if you're willing to get your hands dirty enough. October 14, 1943, 3:15 p.m. Mama's boy doesn't come back. 17 bombers leave Bessingbourne that morning. 11 return. Danny Morrison's plane isn't one of them. Zuck finds out from another crew. They saw it happen. Flak hit over the target. Nothing catastrophic. Just one burst. But it must have severed something critical because Mama's boy started losing altitude. Started falling behind the formation. The Messerschmitts found it 10 minutes later. That night, Zuck can't sleep. He keeps seeing Danny's face. Keeps hearing him say nothing we can do. He gets up at 2 a.m., walks to the hangar, and really looks at a B-17 for the first time. Not as a mechanic doing routine maintenance, but as someone trying to find a way to keep these things from becoming flying coffins. The hydraulic system runs through the fuselage in a single main line. One line. If it gets hit, everything fails. Landing gear, brakes, flight controls, everything. It's insane. It's like building a man with only one artery. Anything severs it, he's dead. But what if? What if there was a backup? What if he could route a secondary line using parts from damaged aircraft? Scavenged components that would never be missed. It would violate about 40 different regulations. Unauthorized modifications to military aircraft during wartime. The kind of thing that gets you court-martialed. But Danny Morrison is dead. And 6 other crews didn't make it back today. And tomorrow, more will die. Zuck makes a decision that will either save thousands of lives or end his own. October 24, 1943, 11:30 p.m. The night shift is perfect for what Zuck has in mind. Officers are asleep. Oversight is minimal. And there's a graveyard of damaged B-17s at the far end of the field. Planes to shot up to repair, waiting to be scrapped. Zuck starts scavenging. Hydraulic lines, fuel system components, anything that might work. He fills a toolbox with contraband and gets to work on a bomber scheduled for a mission in 2 days. His hands shake as he installs the first bypass system. Not from fear, from exhaustion, from grief, from the weight of knowing that if this works, he's saving lives. And if it doesn't, he's destroying his career for nothing. But Zuck's hands have never failed him. Not when he was 12 and fixed his father's car when no mechanic in Pittsburgh could. Not when he rebuilt his first aircraft engine. Not now. By 4 a.m., the bypass is installed. A secondary hydraulic line, hidden behind the primary, following a different route through the fuselage. If one gets hit, the other keeps working. Nobody will notice unless they're specifically looking for it. And why would they? The plane looks exactly the same. Zuck marks it in his personal log. A small notation only he understands. Then he goes to sleep for 2 hours before his official shift starts. October 26, 1943. The bomber Zuck modified returns from a mission over Bremen. The crew is shaken but alive. The pilot finds Zuck in the hangar that evening. Something weird happened up there, the pilot says. We took flak in the fuselage. I felt the hydraulics go. That sick feeling when everything stops responding. I was preparing the crew to bail out over the channel. Zuck's heart stops. Did his modification fail? Did he send men to their deaths? But then, the pilot continues, the pressure came back. Just like that. Landing gear deployed normal. Brakes worked. It was like the plane healed itself. Zuck examines the bomber. The primary hydraulic line has a hole the size of a silver dollar. Should have been catastrophic. But the bypass kicked in, kept the pressure, saved the crew. It worked. It actually worked. Zuck doesn't celebrate. He just nods. Tells the pilot it must have been a lucky hit that missed something critical. Then he goes back to work. Because now he knows what he has to do. And he has to do it fast, before more crews die. November 1943. Zuck works every night shift he can get. He modifies 12 bombers. Then 20. Then 30. He's exhausted. Running on coffee and adrenaline. Sleeping 3 hours a night. But the numbers start to shift. Bossingbourne's survival rate climbs. Pilots start whispering about it. Lucky base, they call it. Crews request transfers here. Nobody knows why these particular bombers seem to defy the odds. Nobody except Zuck, and he's not talking. But someone's starting to notice the statistical anomaly. Someone's asking questions. December 8, 1943, 9 a.m. Staff Sergeant Zuck, report to the commander's office immediately. Zuck's blood turns to ice. This is it, they found out. He's going to be court-martialed? Maybe worse. He walks across the base knowing he might not walk back. Knowing that in about 10 minutes, his life as he knows it might end. Colonel Bradley is waiting. So is a team of engineers from Boeing. And sitting in the corner, taking notes, is a JAG officer, Judge Advocate General, military lawyer, the guy who handles courts-martial. Sergeant, Colonel Bradley says, his voice unreadable. We've been examining the aircraft at this base. We've found ... irregularities, unauthorized modifications, scavenged parts, systems that don't appear in any Boeing specification. Zuck stands at attention, says nothing. His career, his freedom, maybe his life hangs on what comes next. These modifications, Bradley continues, pulling out a file, appear on 37 aircraft, all modified in the last 6 weeks, all modified during night shifts, all modified by the same person. Silence. Zuck can hear his own heartbeat. Sir, Zuck finally says, his voice steady despite everything. I can explain. Danny Morrison. Bradley interrupts. Did you know him? The name hits Zuck like a physical blow. Yes, sir. He was a friend. He died October 14th. Hydraulic failure over Germany. His plane took one hit and became uncontrollable. 10 men died. I know, sir. December 8, 1943, 9 a.m. Staff Sergeant Zuck, report to the commander's office immediately. Zuck's blood turns to ice. This is it, they found out. He's going to be court-martialed? Maybe worse. He walks across the base knowing he might not walk back. Knowing that in about 10 minutes, his life as he knows it might end. Colonel Bradley is waiting. So is a team of engineers from Boeing. And sitting in the corner, taking notes, is a JAG officer, Judge Advocate General, military lawyer, the guy who handles courts-martial. Sergeant, Colonel Bradley says, his voice unreadable. We've been examining the aircraft at this base. We've found ... irregularities, unauthorized modifications, Scavenged parts. Systems that don't appear in any Boeing specification. Zuck stands at attention, says nothing. His career, his freedom. Maybe his life hangs on what comes next. These modifications, Bradley continues, pulling out a file, appear on 37 aircraft. All modified in the last 6 weeks. All modified during night shifts. All modified by the same person. Silence. Zuck can hear his own heartbeat. Sir, Zuck finally says, his voice steady despite everything. I can explain. Danny Morrison. Bradley interrupts. Did you know him? The name hits Zuck like a physical blow. Yes, sir. He was a friend. He died October 14th. Hydraulic failure over Germany. His plane took one hit and became uncontrollable. 10 men died. I know, sir. Bradley opens another file. Since October 26th, this base has had 17 aircraft take damage that should have been catastrophic. 17 times, hydraulic or fuel systems were compromised. 17 times, the crew made it home alive. Every single one of those aircraft had your unauthorized modifications. The room is so quiet. Zuck can hear paper rustling as the Boeing engineers flip through their notes. Sergeant Zuck, Bradley says. And now there's something different in his voice. Something that might be emotion. Do you know how many men you've saved? Zuck doesn't answer. Can't answer. One of the Boeing engineers stands up. Colonel, these modifications, they're brilliant. They violate every regulation we have, but they solve a problem we've been losing crews to for months. A problem we didn't think could be solved without completely redesigning the aircraft. The JAG officer closes his notebook, doesn't say anything, just nods. Colonel Bradley walks around his desk and stands directly in front of Zuck for a terrible moment. Zuck thinks he's about to be arrested. Instead, Bradley extends his hand. Sergeant, we're implementing your modifications across the entire bomber fleet. We're sending engineers to document exactly what you did, and we're never speaking about how this started again. Understood? Zuck shakes his hand. Still can't speak. One more thing, Bradley adds quietly. Danny Morrison's mother wrote to me, asked me to make sure whoever maintains these planes knows her sons. Death needs to mean something. Should I write back and tell her it does? Yes, sir, Zuck manages. Yes, sir, it does. April 1945. The war in Europe is ending. Zuck is still at Basingbourn, still working on bombers. But now other mechanics know his modifications. The Zuck system is standard on thousands of B-17s. It's been incorporated into new production models. It's saved countless lives. Zuck receives a letter. It's from a pilot he's never met, stationed at a base he's never been to. The letter is short. You don't know me, but 3 months ago, my plane took flak over Berlin. Primary hydraulics failed. I was ready to give the bailout order. Then someone told me our plane had the Zuck modifications. That secondary system kicked in. We made it home. All of us. My daughter was born last week. I named her Hope, because that's what you gave me when I thought there was none left. Thank you for breaking the rules. Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for letting me meet my daughter. Zuck keeps that letter in his pocket for the rest of his life. The thing they don't tell you about heroes is how ordinary they look. Paul Zuck wasn't a general or a pilot or an engineer with fancy degrees. He was a mechanic from Pittsburgh who couldn't sleep at night knowing something was broken and he had the tools to fix it. He risked everything: his career, his freedom, possibly his life, because he couldn't watch more kids like Danny Morrison die for reasons that didn't have to be fatal. He didn't ask permission, didn't wait for authorization, didn't trust the system that kept insisting nothing could be done. He just picked up his wrench and got to work. How many lives did he save? Thousands, probably. Maybe tens of thousands. When you count everyone who flew in bombers with his modifications, everyone who made it home because a hydraulic line got hit but a backup kicked in, everyone who lived to see their children born because one stubborn mechanic refused to accept that boys had to die. The B-17 Flying Fortress was built by the best engineers in the world. It represented the pinnacle of aviation technology. It cost millions to develop. And it had a fatal flaw that Paul Zuck fixed with scavenged parts and midnight shifts, and the absolute conviction that broken things can be repaired if you're willing to try. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is exactly what you're not supposed to do. Sometimes saving lives means risking everything. Sometimes the difference between tragedy and survival is one person who sees what everyone else missed and refuses to look away. Paul Zuck went home after the war, went back to being a mechanic, never sought glory, never wrote a memoir, just went back to fixing things. But somewhere in England, there's a runway where thousands of airmen walked away from damaged bombers that should have killed them. And if you listen carefully on quiet nights, you can almost hear the sound of a wrench turning, a bypass installing, a mechanic working while everyone else sleeps, saving lives, one forbidden modification at a time.